אנחנו מוצאים את הספור עם זרה שמשון?
האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה? מה? כן.
Erev Tov, good evening everyone. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Noach, Os Zion, section 7. Before we begin, we're going to read a pasuk from Parsha Noach. This is Perek Ches, pasuk Zion, and the pasuk is talking about after the Teva came to rest on Harei Ararat, the mountains of Ararat, and the water is receding. This is what Noach does. Vayishalach es ha'orev, and Noach sent out the raven. Vayetze yotzo vashov, and the raven went out, but kept coming back. Ad yevoshes hamayim me'al ha'aretz, until the drying up of the water on the land. So Rashi brings down that the way from the Medrash, that the way Chazal understand the pasuk is that the raven never left to do its mission. It would fly away a little bit and then come back, fly away a little bit and then come back. It would basically refuse to carry out its mission. And so ultimately Noach had to send out the Yonah, the dove, which did go and fly away and only came back when it couldn't find a place to rest, and then ultimately found a place and brought back the famous olive branch. But the Orev, the raven, didn't really do its job and wouldn't actually leave to go find out what it needed to find out. So that's where we are. Now let's take a look into the Zera Shimshon on Os Zion, section 7. Sanhedrin Perek Yud Aleph. In Maseches Sanhedrin, in the 11th chapter, the Gemara there quotes the pasuk we just read, Vayishalach es ha'orev, that Noach sent out the raven. Omer Reish Lakish said, Teshuva nitzachas heishiv ha'orev leNoach. The raven had a winning response, had a victorious response to Noach, meaning that Noach wanted to send the raven out to carry out the mission and find out if it could land and find out if it was dry enough to begin to make plans to exit the Teva. But the raven had a good answer to a good response to Noach as to why he was refusing to do that. And now the Gemara continues. Amar lo, the raven said to Noach, Rabcha soneni ve'ata soneni. Your Rebbe, your master, hates me, and that's the raven was referring to Hashem, meaning God hates me, and you hate me. That's what the raven said to Noach. Rabcha soneni, your master Hashem hates me. She'omar likach min hatahorim shiva, because Hashem said that you should take from kosher animals 7. Umin hatimeim shtayim, and from non-kosher animals you should take 2. So the raven says, already from the beginning the cards were stacked against me. I'm a non-kosher bird, and God only took 2 of my species, 1 male and 1 female. God only wanted 2 of us to come into the Teva. Meanwhile, God said to you, Noach, to take 7 of the kosher animals. So obviously God showed favoritism to the kosher animals and gave them a better chance of existing and continuing their species on, but only 1 male and 1 female of non-kosher animals and birds, the raven says, like me. So God hated me. God was not doing me any favors, so to speak. Ve'ata soneni, and you hate me. She'ata sholeach mimin shnayim, because you sent out a bird that only had 2 members in the Teva, umaniach mimin shiva, and you left alone all of the different types of bird species that had 7, right? Well, and the raven says that doesn't make sense. Why not? Im paga bi sar shel chama o sar shel tzina. If while I'm flying around on my mission, the master of the sun or the master of the cold strikes me, lo yehe olam choser beria, will the world not be missing a species? So the raven had a very clever argument to make to Noach and said, you, Noach, have chosen to send me, a non-kosher bird, and there's only two of us. There's a male and a female, myself and my partner. You're sending me out on a dangerous mission. If somehow I run into a freezing cold weather, or I'm struck down by heat stroke from hot weather, and I don't make it back to the teva, that's the end of the ravens. There'll never be ravens left in the world because there are no other partners, male partners, to be with my female partner. So Noach, you first of all, you've sown hatred towards me by endangering me, and second of all, you're doing something that seems very ill-advised by making it so that if I can't return to the teva, there will be no future for the ravens in the world. Ve'od amar lo, and then the raven continued and said to Noach, Shema li'ishti atat tzarech. Perhaps, come to think about it, perhaps you are sending me out because you are interested in my wife and the female raven. The raven said to Noach, Omar lo. So Noach had enough, and he said to the raven, Rasha, you wicked creature, bamutar li ne'esar li, to the partner, to the spouse that's permitted to me, meaning his wife, ne'esar li, she has been forbidden to me as long as we were on the teva. We'll come back to that in a moment. Ba'asar li, for creatures that are forbidden to me, like non-human creatures, for example, the female raven, lo kol shkein, how much more so? Wouldn't it be even more so that she's forbidden to me? Meaning Noach said to the raven, you're talking about something crazy about me desiring to be with your wife, with the female raven. But of course, that would be a total violation and something that's totally prohibited to me, because I'm even prohibited to be with my own wife, my human spouse. And the reason Noach said that is because, and Chazal teach us, but you can actually see it in the Psukim, when Hashem told Noach to board the teva with his family, Hashem talked about the men separate from the women. Hashem said, Noach, you and your sons and your wife and the wives of your sons should go onto the teva. Hashem phrased the pasuk, used wording in the pasuk that indicated that the men and women should go on separately. When Hashem told them, however, when Hashem told the people on the teva to leave the teva, Hashem said, Noach, you and your wife and your sons and their wives should leave the teva now. And Chazal say the point was, and Noach understood the point very well, as did the other people of his family and the people boarding the teva. They understood that Hashem was saying, when you go onto the teva, you have to be separate. There can be no marital relations while you're on the teva. But when you leave the teva after the entire mabul and the flood is over, then you can resume marital relations and you can leave the teva together and be as husband and wife again. So Noach's point to the raven was, I can't even be with my own wife. What kind of crazy idea is it to suggest that I would want to be with your wife, the raven, which of course is totally forbidden to me from the prohibition of bestiality, of humans copulating with animals. Okay, so that's the Gemara in Maseches Sanhedrin. Zera Shimshon continues in the next paragraph. Makshim ha'olam, the world asked a question, meaning many of the commentators asked the following question. Lama lo teritz lo Noach klum al hakusha harishona. Why didn't Noach say even a word in response to the raven's first question, which was impaga bisar shel chama v'chule? No, the first question was that the raven asked to Noach was, how can you send me out on this dangerous mission if I get hurt and are killed and I can't come back to the teva? That'll be the end of the raven species. Why, Noach? Think about it. You're not doing something that makes sense. But Noach didn't respond to that question. Noach chose to respond to the second question about the Mr. Raven's suspicions about a possible connection between Noach and Mrs. Raven. So why didn't Noach respond to the first question at all? V'dochak lomar, and it would be forced to say, meaning if you say the following answer, that would really be a forced answer. It wouldn't seem to be the correct answer. But what would the forced answer be? That because of this fact that Noach did not respond to the first question, Amar Reish Lakish said to Shuva Nitzachas Heishiv HaOrev, that the Orev had a victorious response and rejoinder to Noach when Noach said, "Why aren't you flying away on the mission I sent you?" So since Noach couldn't answer the raven's first question about it being unwise to send him out, since there's only one male and one female raven, that was in fact the meaning of Reish Lakish's statement that the question, the raven's response, was such a powerful response. What's the proof? Because Noach didn't respond to the first question. He had no answer for the first question. So to be honest, that looks like a pretty good way of understanding the Gemara. Noach didn't respond, and that's what Reish Lakish meant, that the raven had a winning rejoinder that Noach couldn't respond to. However, the Zera Shimshon doesn't like that, and he continues. The Nira Lataretz, it seems that the correct answer would be De'in hachinami, that we can concede shenoach tiritz lo af hakusha harishona. Noach actually did, in fact, answer the first question also. Shelefi shehaorev lo yoda lahakshos, since the raven didn't have the knowledge to know how to ask questions correctly and skillfully. Mishum hachi hikshelo shtei kushos. Because of that, the raven asked two separate questions. V'chada migochada kamakshile. And he asked one question on top of the second question. He asked the first question, and then he asked a follow-up question. Ushtehen kusha achas levada. But actually, the two questions are really one question. V'teirutz echad ola l'shtehen. And one answer can go up and count to answer both questions. Aval im hava yodea lehakshos. But if the raven was a stronger conversationalist and he knew how to ask questions correctly, top of the next column, lo havim makshale elakusha achas bilvad. Then that raven would have only asked one question. V'zo ha'yisatshuva nitzachas b'lishum teretz. And then in that case, if the raven could have combined his questions and understood how to turn it into one powerful question, that would have been the winning, victorious response that Reish Lakish was referring to, that Noach would not have been able to answer. So let's pause here before the Zera Shimshon continues and really gets into the meat of the matter. What the Zera Shimshon is saying is that Noach, with his answer, did actually respond to both of the raven's questions. However, had the raven asked his questions correctly and it combined one single question, then Noach would not have had an answer. And that hypothetical scenario is what Reish Lakish was referring to when he said that the Orev had a winning and victorious response that Noach could not possibly respond to. Meaning, when we look back at the Gemara in Sanhedrin, we should not understand it, as many do, to be quoting Reish Lakish to say that the Gemara itself was telling us of the dialogue between Noach and the Orev and the raven, and in the dialogue quoting the Gemara, the raven had a wonderful answer to Noach that was so strong that Noach couldn't respond. That is not the way the Zera Shimshon says we should understand the Gemara. Instead, we should understand the Gemara that the Orev fumbled, messed up in his questions by asking two questions to Noach, and therefore Noach was able to answer both questions with his one single response that looks like an answer only to the second question. But it really, as the Zera Shimshon will demonstrate to us, answered both questions. However, the raven could have asked a very strong question that would have been unanswerable, and Noach would not have been able to respond to the correctly made point of the raven had it been made. And that's what Reish Lakish was really saying. And now let's let the Zera Shimshon give us the detailed explanation which follows. V'hainu, and what this means is the mitchila amar lo ha'orev. From the beginning, at first, the Orev said to Noach, Im paga bisar shel chama v'chuli. If I go on the mission and I'm struck down by heat or cold, freezing weather, then that's it. There'll be no more ravens. Nimtza sheha'olam chaser bria, and then the world will be missing a species, a creature. And obviously that was not, it was Hashem's desire, it was Hashem's plan to have all of the different species be saved on the Teva and not all be wiped out by the Mabul. So Hashem obviously wanted there to be ravens in the world. So the raven said, Noach, don't do something. Don't send me away and endanger me and make it so there are no more ravens in the world, because I won't be able to fly back and be with my female partner. On that point, Noach could have answered as follows. Adarabba, just the opposite. This is what Noach could have said to the raven. Im hayisholeach mimin shiva, if I, Noach, had sent out one of a bird of the kosher species at first, as the raven suggested, then it would have been possible that if the heat or cold would have been endangered that kosher bird, yamusu, maybe that bird actually would have died. Because that particular individual kosher bird was not needed by the world to continue its species, since there were 7 kosher birds to each bird species, or 7 kosher animals to each kosher one. Whether or not that means 7 pairs or whether or not it means 7 individuals is an argument which would take us off on a tangent right now. But certainly there was more than just 2, as there were with the non-kosher animals and birds. There were at least 7 individuals or possibly 7 pairs. V'nimtza she'oso haminyan shel shiva hayachaser echad. And if in fact Noach sent out a kosher bird, and that kosher bird could have been struck down or would have been struck down, then instead of 7, which is what Hashem wanted, there would only be 6. But Noach could say to the raven, if he sends out one of the birds when there's only a pair, shehem tzorech ha'olam, and the world needs both of those 2 creatures to survive, both the male and the female ravens have to survive, just like all of the other non-kosher animals and birds when there's only a pair. Then it would be impossible for that bird that Noach would send out to be injured. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmerein, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu would be sure to guard and protect that creature, kedei sheyiskayim oso hamin ba'olam, in order that that species would continue to survive and live in the world. So the Zera Shimshon says Noach had the perfect answer to the raven's first question about, don't endanger me, Noach, because there's only 2. Send a kosher bird because there's 7 or even 7 pairs. So Noach could have said, no, it's just the opposite, because there are multiple kosher birds. Then if one kosher bird went out, it actually could be killed, because Hashem would not afford it special protection, possibly, because there would be other kosher birds, at least 6 more, to carry on the kiyum hamin, to carry on the continuation of the species. But you, Mr. Raven, there's only you and your wife, as you pointed out, and therefore I can rely on Hashem's special protection to keep you safe and not let the heat or the cold or anything else happen to you, so that you can come back to the Teva and the raven species will continue. So far from my decision to send you out being a bad one, it's actually a very reasonable, wise decision, because Hashem will certainly make sure that nothing happens to you during your mission. That is what Noach could have answered to the raven's first question. Mishum hachi hosif. And because of that, now, in other words, we have a very shrewd, far-seeing raven here. Because the raven understood that Noach could have given that answer to his first question, Mishum hachi hosif, that's why he asked an additional question. Shema leishti atatzorich. Noach, maybe you're sending me away because you want to be with my wife. Klomar, meaning to say, Dilma, perhaps, einata choshesh lekiyam ha'olam klal. Noach, maybe you don't care about each species continuing on at all. Maybe that's not why an issue that you're even thinking about or concerned about. Ela she'ata rotze lehizdavegi mishti. Rather, what you're thinking about and what you're planning to do is to send me away so you can partner up and pair up with my wife, Mrs. Raven. Ubishvil ze'ata sholcheni, and that's the real reason you're sending me away. Ve'imata tizdavegim ishti, and if you actually do pair up with my wife, with Mrs. Raven, te'aseh akara, she will become barren. If Noach were to actually copulate with the female raven, then the raven would become barren and not be able to produce offspring. Kidi Amrin in Perak Ein Mamidin, as we say in the Perak Ein Mamidin in Maseches Avodah Zarah, Nochri Chos al Behemto Shelo Teaker. The Gemara over there says that a non-Jew should not be suspected of having committing bestiality with his animal, because the non-Jew knows that if he were to do so with a female animal, the female animal will become sterile and not able to produce, and the non-Jew would never want that to happen. So even though there are perhaps cases where hypothetically or theoretically the halacha should suspect that a non-Jewish person has had committed bestiality with one of his own animals, and therefore, if the non-Jew wants to sell that animal and a Jew wants to bring it as a sacrifice, he wouldn't be allowed to because of the repulsive sin that was committed with the animal. The Gemara says over there in Avodah Zarah, don't have that thought process, don't have that concern, because the non-Jew would not commit bestiality with his own animal for fear that the female animal will become unable to bear any offspring afterwards. And so the Zera Shimshon says that it would apply in the case of Noach being with the female raven. Ve'oz afilu shelo yazikuni, and then the Orave continued, the male raven continued, then even if I'm not damaged, sar shel chamo, sar shel tzina, we're continuing to the next page, even if I'm not damaged or injured by the heat or the cold, the echazor lechan, and I am able to return to the teva, im kol zeh, nonetheless, ha'olam yeh chaser bria achas, the world will still be missing a species, because even if I make it back, Noach, and you have in the meanwhile chosen to partner up with my wife, Mrs. Raven, then she'll no longer be able to bear offspring, and we together will be the last ravens. There'll be no more ravens. And because of that, the raven concludes, I might be hurt, even though you said Hashem would never allow me to be hurt, I might be hurt, injured by the heat or the cold. Because at that point, after you, Noach, have paired off with my wife, then it no longer matters if I survive, the world will still be without ravens, even if I do survive. Shekfar ein li od bas zug, because at that point I would no longer have a female partner, ru'uyo leholid, who would be able to bear offspring. So let's pause here. According to the Zera Shimshon, the raven again was extremely sophisticated in terms of his thinking process, perhaps not in terms of his ability to articulate a question and formulate in the best possible way, but he was a very sophisticated raven in terms of his thinking, because he was able to think in terms of this long, complicated thought process. And he was saying to Noach, in case you want to answer my first question by saying that Hashem will protect me since I'm the only male raven and I have to be able to come back to the teva to carry on the raven species along with my female partner, don't think that. Don't be so sure that that's true. Why? Because the raven's second point was, you, Noach, I feel certain, are just waiting for me to leave so you can take up with my female partner. And then she will no longer be, as a result of that, she'll no longer be able to bear offspring. And then I'm totally expendable, because even if I come back to the teva, I'm not going to be able to carry on the raven species. So then you are sending me to my death, quite likely, the raven says. So that was what the raven had, a kind of a double or triple thought process in his questions to Noach. V'Noach tirates lo, and Noach answered the raven, Russia, you're a wicked creature. B'mutar li, with my own wife who's permissible to me, I'm not allowed to be with her, v'chule, etc. And certainly I'm not allowed to be with any animal. The im kain, if so, it's impossible to even think, Noach said to the raven, that I would be with your wife, that I would take a partner with your wife while you're gone. And therefore, since I will not, would never possibly be with Mrs. Raven, then she will be able to bear offspring. And of course, that means the future of the raven species is dependent upon you returning. So Hashem will protect you from the heat and the cold, mipnei kiyum ha'olam, because of the continued existence in the world of all the species that Hashem wanted to exist, nizkar le'el, as we explained before. Okay? So now the Zera Shimshon has gone through the dialogue, the deeper understanding, or with a lot more detail, let's say, some of it rather unsavory, but he's gone through more details about the conversation between the Orev and Noach. And at this point, Noach has been able to fend off both questions that the raven posed, and to show the raven that the choice of sending him on his mission was a good one and a wise one, and there was nothing to fear, and the raven was wicked for not carrying out his mission and not leaving the teva to go out and do what Noach had sent him to do. Omnom, however, teshuva zo eina teshuva haguna. However, Noach's response is not really a correct response. Rak lefi devorav shel ha'orev. It's only a good response because of the way the raven phrased and asked and posed his questions. Shehosif lo shema leishti v'chule, because the raven added that second question about Noach wanting to be with his wife. Shehu chashad al hevel v'shtus. The raven was suspecting something which was complete nonsense and foolishness, and the raven never should have gone down that path by asking the second question. She'im ha'yu yodea ha'emes, if the raven would have been just a little smarter and known the truth, the actual truth, lo ha'yu lo tzorech lazeh, he would not have needed his second question at all. Because we say in the third parak of Maseches Ksubis, Hakol bidei shamayim, everything is in the hands of shamayim, chutz mitzinim pachim, except for cold spells and hot spells. Those things are not, in a certain way, in certain situations, are not controlled minat shamayim, and therefore a person has to always be concerned, and in this case an animal has to always be concerned by being injured or even killed by too much cold or too much heat. V'in hachinami shehaya yochel lomus. And it actually was true what the raven said, that he might have died because of heat or cold if he went on his mission. The raven was right that he was in danger. even though he was needed to carry on the species of ravenhood, he still could have been injured and killed by the heat or the cold. Umishum hachi nicha shapir dinaka davka sar shel chama o sar shel tzina. And for this reason, the wording about the raven's point of being injured or killed, struck down by hot and cold, was very appropriately said. Velo onis acher. It didn't mention some other danger, some other accident that could have happened to it. Sheshar anosim heim bidei shamayim, because according to the Gemara and Ksubis that the Zera Shimshon just referenced, all other possible types of accidents that can happen are controlled bidei shamayim, in the hands of heaven. Umipnei kiyum ha'olam ha'yanitzol. And in order to continue the raven species, the raven would have been saved, in fact, from all other types of dangers. Ach mitzinim pachim, however, from cold and heat, ein lo takona im yifka ubo. There would have been no help for him if he had been struck down by heat or cold, because, as the Gemara said, they're not bidei shamayim in the same way that other accidents and other dangers are. V'zehu de'amar Reish Lakish, and it's on this point that the raven did not understand, because of his faulty knowledge of Gemara. He didn't know about the Gemara and Ksubis, and he didn't understand the rule about sinim and pachim, about hot spells and cold spells. And because of that, Reish Lakish said, Teshuva nitzachas heishiv ha'orev lenoach, the raven had a winning, victorious argument to use against Noach's point that he should go on his mission. But the Zera Shimshon is showing us that the raven didn't actually use that argument. However, Reish Lakish was saying he could have used it if only he knew the full picture and the full set of facts and the full amount of information that he could have possibly known. Then he would have, in fact, had an answer to Noach's questions that Noach would not have been able to respond to. So interestingly enough, now that we've concluded the piece, it seems like Reish Lakish in the Gemara that we started with in Sanhedrin is vindicating the raven's refusal to go on his mission, even though the raven himself did not understand how to justify his refusal. Reish Lakish says the raven's points were well taken, and if only he knew all the information he needed to know, he could have answered Noach's responses in such a way that Noach would not have been able to respond again to him, and would not have been able to presumably send him on his mission out of Noach's understanding that the raven had been making a good and valid point. Yasher koach for everyone joining in the Zera Shimshon tonight, and we look forward to, God willing, learning Zera Shimshon together on next week's Parsha.